The most frequently asked questions is if you can and should train every day. Often people think that more training gives you more improvement. If people have to rest for some days, they often think that they lose their power or progress. In addition to that, lots of people feel great when working out, so they want to have that feeling as often as possible. This exactly is the problem. The human body is no machine, and it gets stronger during rest times, not while training. Not only muscles need rest and time for regenerations to adapt, but also our joints, ligaments, tissues and the central nervous system need even more time for regeneration and adaptation. But how do we have to train to get the most out of it without overloading the body? Well, there's no general answer to that question, because there are so many different possibilities and methods to design a training and so many different goals to achieve with training. That's why we made a small overview of the parameters you have to consider when you choose the right amount of training sessions. First, the frequency. The frequency tells you how often you train over a specific time. Second, the volume. The volume is about how many sets and exercises you do in total. Third, the intensity. A common mistake is that people think the intensity tells you how hard you train and if you exhaust yourself or not. But the intensity is the value of the resistance your muscles have to deal with. It's possible to express the intensity with different parameters like the percentage of your maximum strength, which is expressed by the 1 rep maximum, or a specific amount of maximum repetitions, each with a specific cadence. So if you are able to do 3 pull-ups, for example, the intensity will be very high. If you can do 20 pull-ups, the intensity is much lower. The fourth is fatigue. This point is about how hard you train and if you get to your personal limit, like a total muscle fatigue or not. Now there are 2 other points that are no training parameters directly, but that have a big influence when it comes to the choice of how often you should train. One factor is if you split or train a whole body workout. And of course the last factor is you. Everyone is unique and reacts different to a training stimulus. There are several reasons for that, like genetics, nutrition, sleeping behavior, activity besides your workout, age or your momentary level of performance. So don't just copy the training program of someone else without knowing all those factors. What works for someone else doesn't necessarily work for you. To explain all this a bit more detailed, I'll show you a few examples with those parameters. For this we won't include the point you and assume that we always talk about the same person. Example 1. In both examples we train very often with a moderate volume and high intensity. We have a high workload in almost every set and train until muscle failure. In example 1.1 we train split and in 1.2 a whole body workout. When we train each muscle every day with the same exercise and high intensity until muscle failure, our body is much more stressed than if the training is split into push, pull and legs, for example. But also in a split you should be careful. When you split, your central nervous system has to work very hard and also your ligaments, tendons and joints get stressed a lot. Example 2. In example 2 everything stays the same except for the fatigue. In 2.2 we train until muscle failure. This leads to a higher need for regeneration than in 2.1, where we avoid total fatigue. Only this one point makes a huge difference, even if all the other parameters stay the same. A training without muscle failure and high frequency is very good when you want to train very technical demanding elements that you didn't master yet. A free handstand or other complex techniques are good examples for that. Better you practice very often, but don't go anywhere near to your limit. In example 3, we now change intensity and volume. With the high intensity, which means working with high resistances, and the high volume, your body will need much more time to regenerate than with low intensity and low volume. There are thousands of other possibilities. With those examples, you should have recognized that there is no general answer to the question of how often you should train, because there are so many factors that influence it. Some people know intuitively how much they can train and when they need to rest. You might have this ability when you have a lot of experience with training. So keep in mind to design or look for a plan which fits to your level and your goals, and don't just copy another's plan. For further questions,